Hello. So you did pay your truck for June, so you know. Yes. I'm not sure how it got dirty. I'm looking like people we like we're starting projects starting advertising. How's your
I was talking to my wife and she's like, are you talking to yourself? I'm like, no, I'm talking to this thing. Because I took hold my phone and I think my boss called me.
He sounds like a girl.
He's a guy. Very sick. My boss. And the guy has money. Okay. Went to my house. So I don't have
I'm going to need an ink pen. I should have been some laying around like the other guys.
It'll be helpful. You don't need one, but you have to.
Oh, I have one. I picked some up. I have one. Oh, I got it right here.
We have 5 kids, but 3 of them are adults, and then the married, so that was hard. And then that was here.
How are you?
Yeah, she called me. I was at work. That's really good. You're actually step 3rd. 6th graders are like starting like driving.
All right, we're going to get started. We've got quite a bit to get through. Davis is handing out some packets.
I'm lucky though because
Should have enough for everybody. We're going to kind of refer to that here as we get more toward the middle of the night tonight. But how many here were here last week? Most of you were here last week. We have several of you I know that were able to make it the first week, and we're so glad that you're here. One of the things that you need to know is through the book. Okay, so last week we covered the introduction, chapter 1. Tonight we're talking specifically about chapter 2, identity formation. And so if you just got here tonight, if you read through chapter 3, you will be all caught up, be where you need to be as we move into next week. In just a minute, we're going to have Starla come up, and she's a little bit of a special guest for us tonight, talking about identity formation, specifically with teenagers. Kevin Calvert was going to speak tonight, but I got his slides, and he was like showing me up. I'm like, dude, this is awesome stuff, and I want to give him plenty of time. So next week is when he's going to go. He's going to talk for about 20 minutes about some of the different things, practices that he's put into place in his own life to help take away some of the distractions that social media, digital media, all that stuff that happens to all of us. But tonight, the main question that we're going to be looking at is, first slide. Well, first of all, we will go back to that. You guys remember the picture from last week? I couldn't find a quote that she had on Twitter, and her response to that was, I don't even know what to say. So that was joy. But tonight we're talking about the role of identity formation, specifically with teenagers. And the question that we're asking, or hoping to answer a little bit, is why do my kids constantly check their phones? That's going to be the question that we're asking about our own children. Now, the question that I'm going to ask you, that we're going to refer back to at the very end of tonight, is why do you always check your phone? Okay? So that's what we like to ask our kids. Why are you checking your phone? Why are you on your phone? Why are you so consumed with this? But we need to turn that question back on us, and we need to ask that question of ourselves as adults, many of us as parents. Why do you check your phone all of the time? And we're going to be talking tonight specifically about how identity formation works into teenagers, and specifically how their identity formation shapes the way that they use social media, smartphones, and digital media. And as you might be familiar with, you might be experiencing this with your own children at home. Maybe you've worked with children, maybe you're a teacher, but specifically as teenagers, they're asking a lot of different questions about their identity. Questions like, who am I? What talents do I have? How will God use me now and in the future? Am I smart? Am I in the AP classes? Am I in the pre-AP classes? Or am I just in the normal classes? Where am I coming from? What's my family like? Are my parents married, divorced, single parent home, coming out of a divorce home? How many of these questions they begin to ask all have to do with their identities. And so I want you to just take a moment and think back in your own mind, you as a teenager. Sometimes we act like this just showed up on the scene. All of a sudden, teenagers are forming their identity starting in 2018. But think back to when you were 11, 12, 13, all the way through 17. Who did you want to be? Who did you want to be like? What was your identity? For me, it was this guy right there. Anybody recognize Tony Hawk? He was my hero, idol, Caldwell Peralta skateboards. That's what he was all about. Sponsored by them. The Search for Animal Chin video series. No one's tracking me on that. That's okay. TJ, you were nodding your head earlier. I figured I might be able to get something there, but that's okay. So that is who I wanted to be. That's kind of like the group that I wanted to hang with. And this is a big, big deal for teenagers. Where am I going to fit in? How do I fit in with people? What kind of group of people am I going to hang out with? In high school, we have high school students that even deal with this. One year at Youth Quake, we had a kid that was there. And each night we gathered together, middle of the mountains, have this large worship service. And kids, obviously it's Colorado, it's cold, and kids, dress up for the night. They're usually dressed up in their warm clothes, ready to kind of go throughout this whole evening. And a kid walked up to the worship service that night, dressed up in a full-on bull rider outfit. Chaps, protective vest, cowboy hat, this is not looking normal for Colorado, right? I mean, we can get the North Face on, that seems to make sense, or you can get your jacket on, but full-on cowboy outfit. And so I asked him, I said, hey man, I'm just wondering, not many other people here seem to be dressed up in the rodeo outfit here. What's going on? I said, well, this is just kind of who I am. This is what I do. But for that kid, that's just screaming, asking this question, who am I? I just want to fit in somewhere. And that would be the language that many of your children, many teenagers are speaking right now. Who am I is the main question. So Starla's going to come up and share a little bit. A lot of my experience with teenagers just comes from working with them quite a bit. And Starla has been a teacher, also a principal. And she has a lot of the educational background and knows quite a bit about this. And she's going to share with us about identity formation and teenagers.
So can you guys all hear me, or do I need to use the mic? Mike? Yeah, your name.
Mike.
Mike.
My name's Trip Hazard. My baby picking me up, so that's Hello, happy to be here tonight, guys, and just visit for a few minutes about something I think all of us have in common, kiddos. So some of us have some right now that are at this lovely adolescent age. Some of you maybe already had some at this age. Some have some coming up, and maybe some of you just like them and you work with them. But one of the things we know when we're looking at kids this age, sometimes they do some kind of crazy things. In my experience, my few years as a middle school principal, it was always fun. It was never Groundhog Day. You know the movie where it's the same thing every day? Middle school, you don't have to worry about that. It's not Groundhog Day because you never know from one day to the next if they like you, if they like purple, if they like somebody else, if they've got it all together, if they're a wreck, and the next day it's the complete opposite. Sometimes from 1 hour to the next hour. If you have any of that age right now, you might know what I'm speaking of. And so why are they like that? Why do we care? Well, there's some things that we do know about identity formation. We know that there's this concept of being a member, being a part, belonging. And so when you think about an adolescent, we've got different ways and things they're looking at. How do I belong? How do I belong in my family? What does my family look like? Does it look like somebody else's? Do I belong with a group of athletes? Am I a smart kid? Am I a tech kid? Do I have some cultural relations or cultural things in common with other folks? But where do I fit in? What am I a member of? And there's this really important idea of affiliation. And students and kiddos, adolescents, need to find where they fit in. Where do they find and see that bit of affiliation? Well, so there's some really, really smart people from a really long time ago. I wanted an auto answer, but we didn't have one. It makes me feel stuck in one spot. Erik Erikson is a psychosocial development guru, and he came up with 8 stages of development. And these are stages that are true from birth until we start that cycle over again. And they have 2 conflicting ideas at each stage. You see my lovely little graphic. What'd you call it? What'd you say it looked like? Darwin, yeah. Drew thought it was my theory of evolution picture. I'm like, yeah, not quite. Close, but not quite. It goes from being born all the way up through the 8 stages. Well, what we want to look at and think about are what stage are our kiddos at as adolescents? We know that babies, when they're first born, they have to develop trust, mistrust. I think a lot of people probably maybe even heard that in passing. Probably didn't realize that was one of the stages. But what happens is we've got to find a way to negotiate biological things that are happening. We're growing, we're thinking, we're having these ideas, and then socio-cultural influences. How do we balance those 2 things out? How do we have those 2 things merge? And that is what happens as we go through development. This is not going to be a quiz, and you're going to have to know these 8 stages later. Because the one we're really worried about and going to talk about tonight is stage 5. We look at the time that students hit that stage, and they'll tell you the general age range is going to be 12 to 19. But how many of you have a kid that's hit every benchmark at exactly the right moment and fits in all the molds? I didn't have one. So we know that that's general, right? Kiddos in about that age range are hitting this stage of identity and role confusion. So identity is what we would hope they reach. Role confusion is what happens if they aren't able to make sense of and balance those biological forces and those sociocultural forces. So they end up in that role confusion stage. And so what we want to do is figure out what kinds of things are they looking to. Drew already spoke to this a little bit. He thought back, who was his hero? 2 really important influences at this stage for kiddos that are in adolescence, that are in this stage 5 is going to be a peer or a role model, a hero. Why does that matter to us? Why do we want to know that? Why do we want to know that those are the really important things to our kids right now, that they're in this stage? Does it make a difference to you who they hang out with or spend time with or really engage with a lot? It's going to have a lot of influence in how they are going to take in and view the world. We thought we'd talk about having role models and peers. Those are important things, and those things at this time in their life are going to matter more than we are sometimes. What they think, not matter more than us, but what their influence is can have a bigger impact on how they're going about to make that kind of that confusion, that identity piece. When we look at this, one of the things Erickson talks about, he coined the term identity crisis. And that's what is actually happening at each one of those levels. You've got two opposing factors, and you've got to find a way to navigate both of those, and you're in an identity crisis at each one of those stages. And that's not bad. You want an adolescent to hit that stage, deal with those factors, work through them, and come out on the other side. And in the middle, while they're trying to figure out what pieces are important to me, what matters to me, who do I care, what they think about me, you want them to have that struggle so they can figure out which way to go and can move on to their next stage. One of the things we know, and I didn't say it from that last slide, was that when you go through a stage, it's not permanent. So say I got to stage 5 and something hadn't gone great right before that, you can go back. It's not permanent, but until you do, it's going to be hard to progress to the next stage. They are sequentials. It's how we grow. It's the idea of development. And so it's a continuum. You don't have to have a stage perfect and figure it out before you go to the next one. But we end up with a lot of folks in college, not naming any names, that weren't sure what they wanted to do with their life. I might have still been in a little bit of kind of my identity, role confusion, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And so a lot of times that happens, and you've got to finish and get that crisis from the stage before figured out to successfully move to that next stage. So as parents, teachers, mentors, lovers of adolescents, our kiddos, and hoping that they all do well, what can we do to help facilitate that? We can be cognitive of the fact that they're going through that, and that some days when they don't like you, it's maybe not really you. Well, it's probably really not you. But that's what's going on, that that's how they're navigating their life right now, and that we want to help them get through this stage. Who are the people they look to? Who are their heroes? How can we help intentionally put folks in their life that we know are going to have that kind of influence we would want? We were really fortunate. I think probably most folks here know we have a son. He's 17, he's a senior. And we were very, very fortunate when Eli was in 6th grade that he I don't think it was formal, Drew kind of set him up with a fellow at church that was interested in tech, and he was he a senior at the time? But Ty took him under his wing, kind of showed him what he did, and Ty became a role model for Eli. And in my opinion, was a very, very good, strong role model. And so as parents, we want to think about who can we help put in place. Drew helped me with that one. I get no credit for that. But thank goodness there was someone out there watching and seeing what my kiddo had an interest in, and then finding someone that was a really good role model, a strong role model. Any of you guys have kids that play sports? Eli, when he was young, he's not an athlete, but I love him. No, that's not an yet. He has me and his dad, but thank you for that. But he did play t-ball. And he's like in 3rd grade, and I'm like, Eli, here's how you bat, dude. You gotta get the end of your bat on the plane with the ball, and you gotta throw your hands, you gotta get your hips. I'm trying to teach him I know how to bat. I can hit a ball. Just couldn't get it. The coach spends how many minutes telling him the same thing? I'm like, yes, they are. They're very fabulous. So sometimes kiddos aren't going to want to hear, adolescents aren't going to want to hear it from us. We say the exact same thing, but they hear it from someone else who is a hero, a mentor, and it makes a lot of difference. So we just want to be thinking about those things. I take it to heart too when I think about, I want to make sure I'm really careful that I engage and interact with all the young people that I'm around in a way that's going to always be positive for them as well. Because I never know, later on in life, one thing I said, one thing I did, could have impact. And I want to make sure it's always going to be the kind of impact I would hope it would be, to help bring them up, help them feel loved and a part of our lovely Savior's world. So, a couple questions for you guys. So if we think about the so what of how kiddos develop, how they form their identity, and then social media. So where does that come in? Talked a little bit about why we want to maybe be purposeful about giving them good role models and kind of keeping an eye on who their peers are. But how does that impact the use of social media? Because there are pros, there are some good things about social media, as well as some things that aren't. So if you look up here at my list, and I feel certain it is not exhaustive, I feel certain you all could come up with 3 or 4 more things on each side in a matter of about 30 seconds. But let's just think through that and look at if using social media can help increase that feeling of belonging and can help reduce a feeling of isolation, that's a positive thing, as long as that feeling of belonging is in a good place, is in a positive place. Sometimes social media can help widen a social network. So you've got an adolescent who has an interest in rocket science, and there's not a lot of those around in their school or in Stillwater. Social media might be a way they can find others that have a similar interest. I started to say something like Harry Potter, and there's a million of those, so that wasn't a good example. But they can broaden that possibility of folks that they can meet and be social with. Can lower their feelings of loneliness because they've got people they can reach out to. I mean, I had to sneak out in the hall, get my little white Princess phone that had the long spinning cord, sneak it back in my room, shut the door, and make phone calls to talk to a friend late at night and not feel lonely. You know, our kiddos, it's not quite as difficult once we have those devices locked down, but then they probably still can find a way around that. And the other thing is we know that when they have conducted studies, and the more likes that a post gets, and this is not just adolescents, by the way, the reward center, activity in the reward center of our brain goes up. So the more likes we get, the better we feel about ourselves. So that, while that can be a positive, that can also be a negative, something we've really got to be careful for. Think about the idea of, oh, they did that to get likes. What can I do? The old hold my coat. Let me go show you, see what I can do out on social media. So we have to be really careful because that desire for likes, that desire for acceptance in that way, can also be a motivator to maybe not make great choices. And we know really good kids, great kids with great families make bad choices. It just happens. That's a fact of life. They're not perfect. And so it's important that we think about not pursuing that too much, but then also knowing and appreciating that that can also be a boost to a kiddo's self-confidence, self-awareness. So when you think about it, I just would encourage you to help your kiddos realize one of the huge drawbacks is Facebook. You see, I'm old. Elon would be like, I don't know if he's logged on Facebook in 6 months. Twitter and Instagram and GroupMe. Those a lot of times are the highlight reel, right? They're everybody at their very best. Everybody doing the best thing, the most fun. It's the highlight reel, right? It's that 10 minutes at the end of the game when you see a whole 4-hour game. You see all the really cool parts. That's not real life. And we have to help our kiddos realize when they're trying to figure out who they are, where they fit in, that what they see on other people's social media isn't their everyday, all-day real life. That it is the highlight reel. It's the very best. It's their cream of the crop that they're putting out there. So I would encourage you to kind of keep those things in mind when you're looking at things with your kiddo. Don't obsess yourself as a parent about how many likes you have, or if everything has to be perfect before it can go out on a social media, take a picture to send to grandma. It's okay if you got one eye closed. That's me. So my last question that I want to ask before I finish up is, how similar or different do you think those benefits and drawbacks we just talked about of social media, how different are those than like the lunchroom or the Friday night football game of our day? And not everyone here's as old as me, so I won't include everyone, but imagine 30 years ago, we were going to high school football games. How similar or different do you guys think those are? This is where you can talk.
One of the concerns that I think I have is that, like, I'm old, and we had to actually recognize social cues, and we had to actually be able to communicate with human beings, which I have to do at work. And so I'm concerned that my children don't have to do either of those two things when they're now, quote, socializing the way that I'm learning in this book that they socialize. And I wonder, how does that teach them to be little adult humans that I'm supposed to be training them to be when they're going to go out in the real world and have to deal with people like me who are not going to coddle them because they don't recognize social cues and don't want to put up with their, millennial behaviors.
Great question. A couple things I would throw out to think about. I think they have social cues that they follow and pick up on in social media. They're not the kind you and I have when we're face to face. So I think they are learning a little bit about, it's not cool to like, 5 things in a row from someone, so it's going to look like you're a stalker. Or, there are going to be some things they pick up and create that are in that digital world, but they aren't, like you say, going to help them face to face. The only other thing I can tell you that I know for sure, and this is not my area of expertise, but I'm afraid too the work world is probably moving more towards what's going to work best for them than what we have right now. We might be getting phased out. I'm not
fine
sure.
with that. I'll retire.
So great points though. And
that's how the difference in the lunchroom versus the phone. I mean, it's the interaction.
Yeah.
I think it's really easy to say online that you don't like somebody, or that it's the same thing with a text. Like, you can be a lot more cruel in that sort of interaction than you could ever say to somebody's face. So much easier to do when you're not actually sitting and facing somebody and looking them in the eye.
I agree.
Never say the same thing.
And so that's a conversation I've always had with Eli. I've been like, son, if you would not say that to my face right now, do not put that in a text. Do not do that. I mean, anybody here never had a snafu, like, with their digital electronics? Well, I didn't today. Okay, so we're going to call that one. And so we do have to learn how to manage that. And you are right. It is a lot easier to try to throw a little tone in there and be like, oh, that's not what I meant. I'm so sorry. We got a little passive-aggressive action going on. You can tell probably how my day went at work today. But anyway, you're right. And so that I think we have to talk to our kiddos about that and tell them that that's a danger.
I was just thinking, we can tell them what the danger is not, but it's not like we are in a real world situation where we tell them, hey, look, we have to talk to the social like social cues and stuff. And then there's the online, which is really like almost virtually, like the social cues that then develop as an get. So, I mean, we just have to figure it out how you know, watching youngers versus watching up.
And a lot of that starts, you're going to say again, with conversations and talking about what that's like, talking about don't say hurtful things online that you would do. Be careful about how those interactions happen online and in that virtual world, because you might be in a virtual game, and then if you send a text, that's not the virtual game anymore. That's a message that's going out for real. So really good points. And you know, there's not one right or wrong answer. Hopefully it's things that start conversations, and my mom never would have had to have those conversations with me. Thank goodness, I do. I thank the Lord about it. We didn't have social media when I grew up. That would probably not have gone well. But I had for conversations with Eli that my mom and I had to have with me about how are you a good friend, and how do you handle those kinds of communications, and giving them guidance about what that looks like. Don't leave someone out. How are you a friend? If someone posts something and it's not inappropriate and there's nothing wrong with it, but nobody's liking it, how do you reach out to that friend and make them feel welcome, just like you would do, like I would want Eli to do in the lunchroom if he saw a kid eating by himself, no one sitting by him. What does that look like? Because that same kind of social interaction needs to happen. It just looks different when they're on their social devices. One is not better than the other. Please don't hear me preaching that social devices are fabulous and social media is the way to go. But it is the way it's going. And we have to figure out ways to navigate that best to help support our kiddos. I think, Brendan, and I'm going to give it back to Drew, because I think I got a warning I can get a little windy when I get up here.
Well, my question is, part of it that I always is that at the Friday night football game or the lunchroom, you're in that situation, and then you can leave it and you're home and you're out of it and it's done. And you get time to, like, you know, and kids, I mean, I can remember being at the game and getting home and it was like, oh, and they don't get that anymore because it's on all the time.
So as parents, what do we do to give them that break, right? How do we don't want to use it as a punishment, right? Because that would be like saying you can't look and smile and speak to people, right? We're not trying to do that. But as parents, how do you help navigate that? Some of you guys have probably done an interest inventory and found out maybe something similar like a Myers-Briggs. You know, if you're like an ESTJ or an INTP or some of those things like that. Well, that first letter is E and I, and that's where you get your energy from. And so if you've got a kiddo that's an I, they need time to re-energize, and that time needs to be not with other people. Somebody who's an E like me, like a 20 E, I get energized when I'm around people. If I'm home by myself for too long, that's when I kind of start I build my energy up when I'm around people. So you've got to know your kiddo, right? And if they need that time and they need that break, you might, especially depending on their age, have to help them make that, because it's probably not going to be the first thing on their mind to do. I mean, here, let me put the phone down and let myself have a little time. Great questions. Okay, that's all I got. You ready for Drew?
Ready or not, right? Hey, this is what I want you to do. We asked earlier that question, why are you looking at your phone all the time? So I want you to take out something to write with, and I want you to write that down somewhere in your notebook. Why are you looking at your phone all of the time? Okay, so they're boredom, but maybe you're using it for productivity, maybe you're communicating with someone. Just list out several of the different reasons why you think you're looking at your phone all the time. So as you write those down, We're going to save those for a table discussion here in just a minute that we're going to work through together. But as Starla alluded to earlier, there are all sorts of different opinions, things out there, what people think of digital media technology. Some people think that it's all good. This is nothing but progress for society. This is great. And then you meet some people that when they talk about digital media and the influences that it has on teenagers, okay? And we believe all of the stuff that was said there, observations that have been made by very smart psychologists, sociologists, all these different things. We believe ultimately that as followers of Jesus Christ, God has created our kids in such a way that this would happen at this age. That is actually God is in this whole thing, this whole process of them forming their identity. But the thing that scares us, I believe, the most as parents, teachers, pastors, people, leaders of students, is the way that they're now forming their identity is totally different than the way that it was before. Okay? So we had some great questions like, what do I do? How do I help them socialize? How do I help them talk face to face with other people? And I think that is a challenge that we have, and I think in their minds, okay, I think that in their minds, like, what's the big deal? Like, this is just kind of the new normal. This is the way it is. And we're in the middle here. We talked about last week this whole idea of digital immigrants. And that's what this isn't the world that we've always lived in. We know of a different world, and now we're moving into a new time, a time that they only know of. And for them, it's not necessarily a big deal, but that worries us. What's it going to be like one day? How is this influencing them right now? Right? Scares us. You have some people that seem to paint the doomsday picture all the time. I'm going to show you a video here. His name is a guy by the name of Simon Sinek. Okay? And he's just talking about addiction to technology and how technology influences young teenagers.
We know that engagement with social media and our cell phones releases a chemical called dopamine. That's why when you get a text, it feels good. Right? So, we've all had it when you're feeling a little bit down, or feeling a little lonely. And so you send out 10 texts to 10 friends, hi, 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 hi. Because it feels good when you get a response, right? Right? It's why we count the likes. It's why we go back 10 times to see if my Instagram is going slow, did I do something wrong, did I not like anymore, right? The trauma for young kids to be unfriended, right? Because we know when you get it, you get hit a dopamine, which feels good. It's why we like it, it's why we keep going back. Dopamine is the exact same chemical that makes us feel good when we smoke, when we drink, and when we gamble. In other words, it's highly, highly addictive, right? We have age restrictions on smoking, gambling, and alcohol, and we have no age restrictions on social media and cell phones, which is the equivalent of opening up the liquor cabinet and saying to our teenagers, hey, by the way, this adolescence thing, if it gets you down. But that's basically what's happening. That's basically what's happening, right? That's basically what happened. You have an entire generation that has access to an addictive, numbing chemical called dopamine through social media and cell phones as they're going through the high stress of adolescence. Why is this important? Almost every alcoholic discovered alcohol when they were teenagers. When we're very, very young, the only approval we need is the approval of our parents. And as we go through adolescence, we make this transition where we now need the approval of our peers. Very frustrating for our parents, very important for us, that allows us to acculturate outside of our immediate families into the broader tribe. Right? It's a highly, highly stressful and anxious period of our lives, and we're supposed to learn to rely on our friends. Some people, quite by accident, discover alcohol and numbing effects of dopamine to help them cope with the stresses and anxieties of adolescence. Unfortunately, that becomes hardwired in their brains, and for the rest of their lives, when they suffer significant stress, they will not turn to a person, they will turn to the bottle. Social stress, financial stress, career stress. That's pretty much the primary reasons why an alcoholic drinks. Right? What's happening is because we're allowing unfettered access to these dopamine-producing devices and media, basically it's becoming hardwired, and what we're seeing is as they grow older, too many kids don't know how to form deep, meaningful relationships. They will admit that many of their friendships are superficial. They will admit that their friends, that they don't count on their friends, they don't rely on their friends, they have fun with their friends, but they also know that their friends will cancel off them when something better comes along. Deep, meaningful relationships are not there because they've never practiced the skill set, and worse, they don't have the coping mechanisms to deal with stress. So when significant stress starts to show up in their lives, they're not turning to a person, they're turning to a device, they're turning to social media, they're turning to these things which offer temporary relief. We know, the scientists clearly know, that people who spend more time on Facebook suffer higher rates of depression than people who spend less time on Facebook. Right? These things balance. Alcohol is not bad, too much alcohol is bad. Gambling is fun, too much gambling is dangerous. Right? There's nothing wrong with social media and cell phones. It's the imbalance. Right? If you're sitting at dinner with your friends and you're texting somebody who's not there, that's a problem. That's an addiction. If you're sitting in a meeting with people you're supposed to be listening to and speaking, and you put your phone on the table, face up or face down, I don't care, that sends a subconscious message to the room that you're just not that important. Right? That's what happens. And the fact that you cannot put it away is because you are addicted. Like if you wake up and you check your phone before you say good morning to your girlfriend, boyfriend, or spouse, you have an addiction. And like all addiction, in time it will destroy relationships, it will cost time, it will cost money, and it will make your life worse. We know that engagement with social media and our cell phones releases a chemical called dopamine.
All right, let's do this. Take your book and turn it to page 26. Okay. How many of you watch videos like that kind of freaks you out a little bit? Right? Start to get a little bit scared by some of these different claims that he is making. Kind of interesting. How many of you, whenever you watch that, you think that sounds like he's saying some pretty true things there? Some pretty risky things that whenever you're watching that and like thinking of your own kids, thinking of their own situations, thinking of things that he is talking about that you have done, that you've watched your own kids do these actions with their phone. Now, here is something that we all have to understand. We're in the day and age where we see videos like this. Access to this stuff is all over the internet. And whenever we watch things like this, many times it is just like so much anxiety, right? We just have videos all over the place. This guy's name is Simon Sinek. Now, this is what you need to know. He has a degree in anthropology, so he studied people, but he's not a researcher on social media. He's not a PhD in adolescence. He has written some books on leadership. He gives TED Talks. How many of you pretty engaging whenever he's talking, right? Sounds like he's a pretty good arguer. Now, not saying that some of the things that he is saying aren't true, because I really believe that you can go to find research and many of the things he's saying are true. But that's like he's talking about some things, okay? And so one of the ways that my thinking has been challenged is we can't just take whatever we see, whatever we watch on a video is all of a sudden the all-time truth about the way that things go when kids are on social media. All sorts of different factors come into play. All of these different things. Is this child alone a lot? Is this child coming from a different difficult family situation? Are they involved in other areas, other healthy activities? Do they have real engaging friendships one-on-one with other people? Are they well connected in other environments, church environments, youth group environments? Are they an at-risk teenager? I would say every teenager at some level is at risk. But all of these things come into play. Now, this is where if you look at page 26, I think the book really make a good point that I think would actually go against some of what Simon Sinek is saying. It says in bottom page 26, point 2 there, it says, a lot of existing research treats minors, college students, or parents and adults as separate categories. It doesn't look at families as a whole or trace any progression from one developmental stage to the next. This means that we don't yet have a clear sense of how much of what young people are doing online, here's the key right here, is a digital version of them acting like adolescents, and how much reflects the start of behaviors they will carry with them into adulthood. So kind of going against what he's saying. What he's saying is all of a sudden when a kid experiences this, now that can happen, when a kid experiences this for the first time and there's that dopamine and there's all of a sudden this addiction, you heard what he said, that takes place as a teenager, and then how long does it go? For the rest of their life. Now, the book is saying something almost opposite of that. We don't have the research right now that connects like how these different social media activities and how digital media goes through the different stages of someone's life, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to be that way. Okay? Now, go to page 47. I think this was in chapter 2 that we read this week. After we read through this, gonna have a little discussion. But second paragraph there on 47 says, for adolescent children, checking in is even more significant because our kids' identities are wet cement waiting to be influenced by the impressions of others. They're not passively staring at content, but actively communicating with words, images, videos, and sounds. And to be clear, he says, we are not suggesting a free-for-all, where kids use their devices as often as they want. We will get to the issue of helping your kid learn to set limits and boundaries in the next chapters. And here's the key. Our hope is that this chapter has helped you feel a bit less anxious. How many of you feel anxious about the way your kids are using these devices? Feel a little less anxious about how often our kids seem digitally connected. For a lot of them, this can and will be a passing phase, not signs of a lifelong addiction. Now, could they be starting an addiction? Sure. Is that going to happen all of the time when kids are in healthy environments? We don't have the research to say that yet. But what they're saying is this may be this time in their lives where they are forming their identities in such a way, it's such a big deal to them. And they're doing it in a digital way, and they're doing it more at this time in their life than at other periods. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to carry over. Everybody can take a nice deep breath and relax, if not just for a second, when we hear that. Now, I'm not saying that we don't need to be concerned at all. We're not saying just go, take your phone, watch YouTube videos 10 hours a day. That's what you need to do with your life. Oh, Johnny's looking at porn. That's okay. Just forming his identity. We're not saying that at all, right? But this may be, maybe, it might be a phase for them. Now, that's what I want you to talk about for just a few minutes at your tables. How have you seen identity formation present in the life of your child or teenager? And then how are they demonstrating change in their lives now that demonstrates that their identity is being formed? So, talk at your table, just a few minutes, share a little bit. If you have teenagers, you can talk about them. If you have younger than teenagers, talk about your elementary kids. But just share a little bit about that for a few minutes.
So my other two kids don't have stuff. They're all like, I'm the only one. I'm like, oh well. I tell you what,
Like, yeah, put that down about 15,
like I tell my kids, like what you don't see, it won't hurt you. Like I got all Facebook because people platform a lot of stuff. So I'm like, I'm not doing that. So I don't use Facebook. And I tell my son and my son's like, they were bad. They now I know why you don't have Facebook. I'm like, yeah, so now you don't have Facebook. Like, I don't know how people do this. Like, my son has a girlfriend and she broke up. God, why do people do that? I'm like, you hang out with this person all the time. He's like, we never hang out. I'm like, why is that your girlfriend? Who's your text? I'm like,
I'm around 30. I'm like, you. I'm like, I don't date.
I text these guys, they to text me. I don't believe it. I think I just got a and I don't want my kids to ask them. So I don't know. So I mean, we see my kids not there, or they go to dad, and we see each other, or we just text. So I'm like, I'm with my kids, I can't talk to them. So they don't know. So I'm like, and it doesn't even now here. But I just, I don't want all of this. You don't need nothing too high. Like, you can't do that.
Drawing together. You can talk to faces.
So I'm like, everything. I'm like, oh no.
We'll give you about a minute to finish up. Okay, so hopefully you've had a little discussion. You're seeing some changes. If your child's in high school, you've probably seen this take place already. If you have ones that haven't hit 6th grade, middle school age yet, this is probably right around the corner, just on the horizon. But we see all sorts of different things happening in our kids' lives whenever their identity begins to form. And interesting what we find out about our kids' identities. About a year ago, my daughter came home and she was just kind of, I mean, it wasn't like a secret or it wasn't like whispering, but she said, Dad, do you know that our middle child, his name is Blake, do you know that Blake has his own YouTube channel? His own YouTube channel. That's interesting. I didn't know that he had a YouTube account, but apparently he now has his own YouTube channel. And so we're talking about this. She said, yeah, I think it's real. I heard some people talking about it. And so that right there is what we got. At 14 years of brilliant parenting, that is what we got. And very aggressive looking. I can't think of a better word to describe that, but just that. Okay, what's going on with the YouTube channel? So I kind of walked by his room and said, hey, I heard that
told me you got a YouTube channel? You know, what's going on with the YouTube channel? Well, just wanted to make some songs. You want to make some songs? Okay, this is interesting. Well, make some rap songs. So I made some rap songs and put it on there. I thought, my first reaction, I'll just tell you as a parent, my first reaction is, only this is what you need to know, okay? That's wrong. You shouldn't have a YouTube channel. And he started, no, Dad, I just want to make some music. You know? I just want to make some rap music in my room by myself. And 15 years old, I can remember going back to when he was young, and he used to do some pretty good art. He'd sit in his room, read. He read books. That's amazing. He read and he did art and kind of drew some really cool pictures. And what is this telling me? This comes out in a very funny way. Young nuts with just a U, and the nuts is a $, and I'm kind of put on this front, right? And we gotta be the funny guy about this. But maybe it is, like a funny way, deep down inside, he's going, you know what? Maybe I have some creative ability that I'm wanting to explore. I'm wanting to maybe even show people some different things. That sounds funny, sounds maybe even a little bit weird to me, but this is this way that kids are now interacting, the way that they're forming their identities. I want you to write this down in your notes. Just this question. What are you noticing online about your kids' interactions that helps you understand something about their identity? Okay? So I understand maybe not everybody has a child that's on digital media, social media, whatever. But just begin to ask that question. You can even see it in different things like their video games. You can see, I've noticed at least with our boys, before we got into Fortnite like crazy, they used to play different sports games, different things like this on video games. And whether it's that or they're creating like some sort of battle game or whatever, I've noticed that they spend 95% of their time creating what? Like the character or the avatar or I don't even know what it's called. But they spend most of their time creating. This is what I noticed. Like, why? Well, they gotta have awesome muscles, and they gotta have this look and this kind of hair, and this uniform. It's gonna be so cool. And the more that I realized and watched what they were doing, and heard the different things that they were saying, how much of that do you think has to do with this idealized version, maybe, of what they want to be? This is me, 12, 13 years old, but this is me, grown up. And this is me. You can see a lot of these different things about their identities just by watching some of the different things that they do online, video games, all these different things. So there should be a packet there, family ministry there on the front of it. If you want to turn to, I don't know if it's page 4 exactly, but it just says Ministry Map. I just want to kind of help you guys understand a few different things about what we teach and why we teach it. If this is such a big deal at this point in their lives as teenagers, identity formation, we better be teaching about that. I handed out a survey last week, and one of the questions was, how could we as a church help you as families really keep your kids engaged and growing as disciples of Jesus Christ? And one of the responses back was great. Just said, we want to make sure that what's being taught keeps them engaged, right? And so all the different ages and stages that we talk about when we look not just at high school ministry, junior high kids, or the treehouse of early childhood, we view it as one big picture. One is not greater than another. This is a kid that is now growing up, and we emphasize different points. We talk about in our church, we have 4 different pillars of discipleship: identity, biblical literacy, spiritual formation, and missional living. And so we emphasize these different pillars at different ages and stages on purpose. And so we talk about with early childhood or preschool age, we talk about this whole identity that God created them. Okay? We talk about that a lot. We talk about the kids ministry, biblical literacy. You need to know the Bible. You need to discover truth and develop relationships. And so when your elementary age kid comes home, What'd you learn? Well, we just talked about another story from the Bible. And guess what? That's on purpose because they need to know the Word of God. They need to know all about the Scripture, right? So we talk about biblical literacy a lot. Spiritual formation is a big deal, 6th through 8th grade. In secondary to spiritual formation, again, surprise. We talk about identity. If their identity is forming, then we need to be speaking louder than everyone else about where their ultimate identity is from, where they're going to find true significance. We need to teach them these truths. Different things like this. Genesis 1:28, they're creating in God's image. Ephesians 2:8, these are just truths about the gospel. We talked about a new way of viewing digital media and technology. Last week we talked about Romans 12:1 and 2 being transformed, how the gospel can transform us and how we view digital media and social media. This is where it ends up, right? This is their identity, their God-given identity. They're saved by grace. They're justified by faith. Their sins are forgiven. They are children of God. Man, those are powerful. And each and every day, you, along with your children, we live out our identities. And we can believe the lies that the world would tell our kids. They can believe those lies. They're not good enough, they're not smart enough, they're not pretty enough, they're not athletic enough, or they can embrace this true God-given identity in Christ. That's the good news. That's the good news that we have to continue to speak, that we have to continue to believe ourselves and our kids. That's what we have to teach them at home. And I think so many times we get caught up in not dealing with the root of the problem. We just want to deal with girl drama. We just got to be friends, right? Just love everybody. And then the way that we're going to deal with these emerging young adult men, testosterone filled, they think they're awesome. They're going to challenge us for the very first time. I'm a man. Okay, yeah, whatever, right? How much of that can we put in its right place and not just avoid it? How much can we put in that in the right place whenever they understand their identity? When they live out this identity in Christ. And all of a sudden, not that we're going to have to deal with those issues, but we quit fighting all of these little problems. Sometimes big problems, let's be honest. When we get to the root of it, which is their identity in Christ. And that's a big deal for us. I want you just for the next minute or two on page 38. I want you to talk about this. The last paragraph. Talking about the whole idea of screen time, right? We got rules on screen time. We have screens are going away. We fight those battles, right? Put it away, shut it down. Not saying we should never do that. But their challenge to us is it has to be more thoughtful than just no screens, okay? They say an important first step for us as parents is to recognize that we have to break the mold when it comes to how we parent in a digital world. Screen time limits are definitely still helpful, but we need to think more thoroughly about how and why, because our kids are smart enough to know it's not just how. It's like, okay, so why is that limit? Why is it that way? How and why we set these boundaries as kids get older. All-night marathon gaming sessions, taking the phone to bed, texting at dinner, talking about boundaries is a must, but because media means something different to our kids than it did to us as kids, or even us now, our responses need to be more thoughtful and nuanced than we might expect. So I want you to talk about just that last statement. How do your responses as parents to your kids need to be more thought out than just, sometimes it does need to be put it away, right? But after a while, that answer just kind of doesn't work, and they want to know why. So why do your responses need to be more thoughtful than just 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes to put it away? Why and how have you done that in your family? So talk about that.
I'm trying to
But he was outside. With flipping it. Now I was like, he's right by the door. So I'm like, where's the bus? This is what he's for. The world is like totally different. So it's hard. I can't think about, you know, hard details about it.
As you guys finish up, we've got just a few minutes, and before I forget, I want to remind, if you have a few guys that would stay outward and help us tear this down, that would be great. But there's going to be a picture on the screen here. Maybe you've seen this before, right? So I want you to go back to the question I asked earlier. Why are you always looking at your phone? It seems like we've always been looking at something, right? It might be a simple distraction, but there might be a deeper root as to why it's not just our kids, but many times it's us. Kim and I have a friend, none of you know this friend of ours, girl we've known for a long time. And several years ago, she was notoriously on social media, always taking pictures of herself. And I can remember I was like, I remember looking at it like, am I missing something? Like, this is so crazy. But she's in her car. Of course, in the car. So we got to take the selfies in the car. Maybe like using the mirror to reflect back. I don't even know what it was, but she's in the car and she took a picture and she's prepared for the picture. Okay, this is not just accidentally. This is the real thing. She's prepared. She's ready. And she's up front and center, and the words under the photo is, "Love spending my days with this handsome guy." Okay? And it's her up front and center, and her son that's in the back seat, and he's kind of got his hair like matted up against the window and looking the other way. Okay? Clearly, this was not about this handsome guy who was her son. Clearly, it was clearly about her. Okay? So I want to ask us all that question. Why are we always looking at our phones? And so for many of us, we would like to think, yes, my identity was formed at 15, and now I'm a fully grown, mature adult in Christ. I understand my identity, right? But for many of us, there's this feeling of approval, this insecurity that we might have about being alone, standing somewhere, and I've got nothing to do. Everyone else is talking around me, and I'm just going to take out the phone. I'm going to look important, like text somebody, because I got things to do, because I'm really important. And we want to feel secure and significant that way. We want to validate our own families. We want to have these perfect pictures. And I think for many of us as parents and grown adults, many times we have an identity problem. And that's us. So what's going to happen when your kids grow up and leave, and they're doing just fine without you? And for so many years, that's where that's where we've put everything, and that is our identity.
And maybe we have a child that excels in different areas. Maybe they're really smart. Maybe they're great on the athletic field. And then there's all of a sudden an injury and you can't go to the game anymore. And think, that's not someone else. That's my kid, right? And that brings to us this great deal of identity, of security, all of those things. What happens when we can't make it to the beach and get the perfect family photo on the beach, and you start scrolling through social media, and everyone else has been to the beach apparently, right? You didn't make it to the beach this year. And then all of a sudden it's like, man, we gotta get a picture. We gotta bring in a green screen, get a beach somehow. I don't know. Seriously. It's not our kids, it's us. And whenever we talk about digital media technology, social media, when we talk about getting a new view, getting a new mindset by which we view all of these things, that is where the gospel is the answer. And it's not me, it's not my kids, it's not this perfect reality that we want to think that we're fooling other people with. It's true, it's unchanging, it is real. And the gospel is that which that can transform all of this and show us where our real and true identity ultimately lies. And I think when we understand that, a lot of these different issues begin to make sense. 3 quick things before we go. Everyone says on the surveys, we need practical answers. We need to fix all these problems. I totally get it. I think we should do all of those things. And so that's why Kevin's here and that's why Bob's here. So if you need help with the internet problems that you have at your house or need to secure things, they've told me they are standing here and can answer all your questions every week. So 3 quick things that you can do that's pretty positive with social media, stuff on the internet. You guys have probably seen these before. The Bible Project. Not sure if you're familiar with these things, but if you have kids that are really creative and into art, there's this group of people called the Bible Project people in Portland, Oregon, and they do all of these awesome artwork designs and things that help explain all these different books of the Bible. Okay? So if you have a kid that's really into creativity and art, they might enjoy some of that stuff. If you're into that kind of thing, you might check it out too. But very creative, short, 5 to 10 minute videos that explain a lot of different historical background and different things on books of the Bible. So if you just go on YouTube and search the Bible Project, you'll see everything that they have. So here's a sample video that they make, of Ecclesiastes, and they kind of describe everything. And as he's talking about it, it's they're doing the artwork along with the audio. I think Hudson would like this. Yeah, for sure. So anyway, you might check those out. Another thing that I would give your kids permission. Well, I'm not giving your kids permission. Maybe you can. During church, say, get out your phone. And it's going to be really crazy. So get out your phone, and if you go on the YouVersion Bible on your phone, you guys, verse images, maybe I was late to the game on verse images, but teenagers, this is a big deal. Guys and girls do this a lot, and many times I've noticed that when I get home, I guess I'm friends with some of your children probably on the Bible app somehow. I literally don't know how that happened. My son tells me, you grew up in the church whenever your Bible app is your form of social media. So somehow I get these notifications by email from a lot of your kids that they've made verse images, and most of the time it's church. Many of you have shaped my children, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for a community that we have our identities in Christ, and many of you have helped my kids. And that's why we believe that this is such a big deal. So I never, ever, ever apologize. We're not addicts of church. Just go to more church. Together they can know you. And the challenges that they have doing this in a world that seems... All right. We can have just a few people. We'll stack the chairs as we did last week, and then tables and stuff like that. Thanks a lot for coming. Come next week, Paul's going to teach us to play cards. Next week.
Thanks, Drew.
History proves that.